Ryan didn't plan to stay that late. He told his daughter he'd be home before she fell asleep. He'd meant it, but the music kept getting louder, the room kept getting warmer, and people kept laughing like tomorrow didn't exist. Victoria Hale was still there when most of them left. She was sitting wrong in her chair, too still. Her smile didn't match her eyes. When Ryan asked if she was okay, she tried to stand and nearly folded. He caught her without thinking. Her hand gripped his sleeve like she didn't trust the floor anymore. Like she didn't trust herself. And when she looked up at him, her voice came out quiet. "I think I ruined everything." Ryan felt his stomach drop, because he already knew what she meant. And he already knew no one was going to believe him. Ryan didn't like office parties. He went to them because that's what you did when your boss invited you, and you had a mortgage and a kid and a life that couldn't afford pride. But he always felt like he was wearing the wrong skin in those rooms. Too stiff, too quiet, too aware of every second. The party had been held in one of those downtown venues that tried too hard to look effortless. Exposed brick, dim hanging lights, bartenders who wore suspenders like it was still charming, music that made conversations feel like arguments. Ryan showed up after work, still in his dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He stayed near the edges, talked when spoken to, smiled when required. Every 15 minutes he checked his phone. There were no missed calls. His daughter, Emma, had been with his neighbor, Mrs. Baines, a widow who watched Emma sometimes when Ryan's schedule ran long. She was reliable, kind, the kind of person who left little notes in the lunchbox, even though it wasn't her job. Still, Ryan felt it in his chest, that quiet pressure that came whenever he wasn't where he promised he'd be. He had promised Emma he'd be home before she fell asleep. And he meant it, but work had been busy, and Victoria Hale had made a point of asking him to come, not ordering, not insisting, just looking at him in that direct way she had and saying, "It matters that you're there." She didn't say why. She didn't need to. Victoria was the kind of boss who didn't waste words. People listened to her because she didn't talk just to hear herself. She was also the kind of boss who made people nervous, not because she was cruel, she wasn't, but because she saw things, missed details, weak excuses, lazy work. She had a way of looking at someone like she could see the exact moment they decided to stop trying. Ryan respected her, maybe more than he wanted to. He spotted her across the room early in the night. She was standing with two executives from another branch, holding a drink in one hand, her other arm folded across her waist. She looked composed, polished, like she'd been born knowing where to stand and how to angle her body so she never looked out of place. Her black dress wasn't flashy. It was simple, clean lines, fitted without being loud. Her hair was pulled back, a few strands loose around her face like she hadn't bothered fixing them. Ryan watched her for a moment longer than he meant to. Then he looked away. He didn't want to be that guy, the employee staring at his boss, the single father who didn't get out much and mistook professionalism for intimacy. He went back to nursing his soda water. He didn't drink at events like this, not because he didn't like alcohol, but because he couldn't afford to lose control, not even a little. If Emma got sick at midnight, he needed to be able to drive. If something happened, he needed to be clear. That was how his life worked. He didn't have the luxury of being careless. People drifted around him in waves. Conversations started and ended without meaning. Someone slapped him on the shoulder and told him he was doing a great job this quarter. Someone else asked him if he was dating anyone yet, like it was a joke that had been going on too long. Ryan smiled and shrugged and gave vague answers. He didn't mention Emma unless he had to. Not because he was ashamed of her. Never that. But because the moment people knew you were a single father, they looked at you differently. Like your life was already half written. Like you were someone they could pity or admire, but never just normal. Around 10, the crowd got louder. People loosened. The drinks multiplied. Someone started dancing. Ryan was already thinking about leaving. Then he saw Victoria again. This time, she was alone. She was leaning against the bar, shoulders slightly hunched, staring at the glass in her hand like she didn't recognize it. Her face was flushed. Not the warm kind of flush, the kind that came from too much alcohol and too little food. Ryan felt something tighten in his stomach. He hadn't seen her eat. He hadn't even seen her sit down. He waited a few seconds, hoping someone else would notice, hoping one of the executives she'd been talking to would come back, hoping her assistant Claire would show up and do what assistants always did. Smooth things over, handle logistics, get their boss safely home. But no one came. Victoria lifted her glass and took another sip. Ryan hesitated. It wasn't his place, he told himself that. He repeated it silently, like a rule. But then she swayed, just slightly, like the floor shifted under her. And something in Ryan moved before his brain could catch up. He walked over. He stopped a respectful distance away. Not too close, not familiar. "Ms. Hale," he said. She blinked slowly like she was surfacing from water. Her eyes landed on him, unfocused at first. Then they sharpened. "Oh," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried a slight drag. "Carter." Ryan nodded. "Are you okay?" Victoria's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "I'm fine." Ryan had heard that exact tone before, not from Victoria, but from people who didn't want to admit they weren't. People who thought admitting weakness was the same as surrender. He didn't push right away. He glanced at her drink. "How many of those have you had?" Victoria looked at the glass like she hadn't realized it was in her hand. "Enough," she said. Ryan swallowed. He didn't like where this was going. "Do you have a ride home?" he asked. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She seemed irritated by the question, but not angry. More like tired. "I can call one." Ryan waited. She didn't move, didn't reach for her phone. She just stared forward, past him, like the room was too loud and she was trying to tune it out. Ryan could smell the alcohol on her breath now. Not overwhelming, but present. He felt the urge to step back. Not because he was disgusted, because he was aware of how this looked, of how quickly things could be twisted. But leaving her like this didn't sit right either. He tried again, quieter. "Victoria, do you want me to call you a car?" That got her attention. Her gaze snapped to his face. Something shifted behind her eyes, something defensive. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," Ryan replied, "but I can." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it all night. "I hate these things," she muttered. Ryan didn't respond right away. He didn't want to agree too quickly, didn't want to sound like he was trying to bond with her. But he understood. He said, carefully, "They're exhausting." Victoria's laugh came out short, sharp, almost bitter. "Yes," she said, "they are." She took another sip. Ryan's jaw tightened. He watched her hand. It wasn't steady. He didn't know how to do this. He'd handled crying toddlers, sick children, angry teachers, grieving parents. He'd navigated hospital bills and broken washing machines and nights where the silence felt like a physical thing pressing down on his ribs. But this was different. This was his boss. A woman who controlled rooms with her voice. A woman who signed his paychecks. A woman who could ruin his life with one misunderstanding. Ryan cleared his throat. "I'm going to step outside for a second. If you decide you want help getting home, just tell me." Victoria didn't answer. Ryan turned away. He made it 3 steps before he heard her voice again. Ryan. It hit him harder than it should have. She never used his first name. He turned back. Victoria was staring at him, her expression unreadable. Her eyes looked darker than usual, glassy around the edges. "I shouldn't be like this," she said. Ryan didn't know what to say. He stood there, hands at his sides, feeling the music thump through the floor. "It happens," he said finally. Victoria shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered, "it doesn't." She tried to straighten, to pull herself into that usual posture. It didn't work. Her shoulders sagged again. Then she looked down at the bar, like she couldn't stand looking at him. "I can't go home alone," she said. So quiet he almost didn't hear it. Ryan felt his chest tighten. The room didn't feel as loud anymore. It felt distant, like everything around them blurred. He glanced around instinctively. People were laughing, dancing, leaning close in conversation. No one was paying attention. Not yet. But it only took one glance. One phone camera. One coworker walking by at the wrong moment. Ryan stepped closer. Just enough to speak without raising his voice. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll take you home." Victoria's head lifted. For a second, something like relief flickered across her face. But it was immediately replaced by something else. Fear, maybe. Or shame. "You don't have to," she repeated. But it sounded weaker now. Ryan didn't argue. He just said, "Do you have your bag?" Victoria looked around as if she'd forgotten she owned one. Then she pointed vaguely toward a chair near the corner. Ryan went to retrieve it, a sleek black purse, expensive looking, resting on the seat like it had been abandoned. He picked it up carefully as if it might explode. When he returned, Victoria had one hand pressed to the bar. She was breathing slowly, like she was trying to keep herself anchored. Ryan held the purse out. "Let's go." Victoria nodded. She stepped away from the bar and immediately stumbled. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't fall. But she pitched forward enough that Ryan had to catch her elbow. Her skin was warm through the thin fabric of her sleeve. Victoria stiffened at his touch, and Ryan felt it. That instant recoil. That awareness of contact. "I'm sorry," she muttered. Ryan loosened his grip slightly but didn't let go. "It's fine," he said. "Just walk with me." Victoria didn't argue. They moved through the crowd, Ryan slightly ahead, guiding her without pulling. He kept his body between her and the room as much as possible, not to hide her, but to shield her from bumping into people. Someone called out, "Leaving already, Hale?" Victoria didn't respond. Ryan glanced over and saw one of the managers drunk and smiling. The man raised his glass like it was a joke. Ryan forced a polite nod. Victoria's fingers tightened on his arm. They made it to the exit. The air outside hit them both like a slap. Cold night wind, sharp and clean compared to the heavy warmth inside. Victoria sucked in a breath and held it, as if the cold hurt. Ryan looked at her face under the streetlight. She looked younger out here, not in a flattering way, in a tired way. Like the lighting stripped away the authority and left only a woman who hadn't slept enough in years. Ryan didn't like seeing her like that. It felt wrong. He guided her down the steps. His car was parked a block away. He hadn't wanted to pay for valet. He never did. They walked slowly. Victoria's heels clicked unevenly on the pavement. Her balance was off. She kept drifting toward him without realizing it. Ryan stayed close enough to catch her if she fell, but he didn't wrap an arm around her waist. He didn't want that kind of contact. Not unless he had to. Halfway down the block, Victoria stopped. Ryan turned. "What's wrong?" Victoria stared at the sidewalk. "I shouldn't have asked you," she said. Ryan didn't answer immediately. He could hear the traffic in the distance. A horn, a siren far away. "I didn't have to say yes," he replied. Victoria's jaw tightened. She looked like she was trying to swallow something bitter. Ryan watched her hands. One was gripping her purse strap. Her knuckles were pale. Then she said, "People will talk." Ryan felt his throat tighten, because she was right. People always talked, and Ryan already knew who would suffer more from it. He looked at her, steady. "Let them," he said. Victoria's eyes lifted to his face again. She looked like she wanted to believe him. But she didn't, not fully. And Ryan realized in that moment that this wasn't just about being drunk. This was about something else. Something she'd been carrying long before tonight. They kept walking. When they reached his car, Ryan unlocked it and opened the passenger door. Victoria hesitated. Her hand hovered over the doorframe like she didn't trust herself to get in. Ryan waited. Finally, she lowered herself into the seat, moving carefully, awkwardly, like she was afraid of falling even while sitting. Ryan shut the door gently. He walked around to the driver's side and got in. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The car smelled faintly like Emma's strawberry shampoo, and the cheap air freshener Ryan kept hanging from the mirror. There was a child's booster seat in the back. Victoria stared at it. Ryan watched her eyes fix on it, her expression shifting. "You have a daughter," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. "Yeah." Victoria didn't ask more. She just stared a little longer, like she was seeing a part of him she'd never had access to. Then she leaned her head back against the seat. Ryan started the engine. He didn't ask for her address right away. He waited, giving her time to steady herself. But after a few seconds, Victoria spoke again. Her voice was softer now. "I don't usually do this." Ryan kept his eyes on the road ahead even though they hadn't moved yet. "I know," he said. Victoria swallowed. "I wasn't trying to." She stopped, her fingers clenched on her lap. Ryan glanced at her. Her eyes were shut tight, like she was bracing for impact. And suddenly, Ryan understood. She wasn't worried about being seen drunk. She was worried about what she might have done, or said, or implied. Something she couldn't take back. Ryan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He said evenly, "Victoria, tell me where you live." Victoria opened her eyes. She hesitated again, then gave him the address. Ryan typed it into his phone, placed it in the console, and pulled away from the curb. The city lights passed in slow streaks through the windows. Victoria sat with her hands folded in her lap, posture stiff, but she was trying to hold herself together through force. After a few minutes, she spoke again. "Did I embarrass myself?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, yes, but not in the way she meant, not in the way people would laugh about. He kept his voice calm. "No." Victoria let out a breath. But it didn't sound like relief. It sounded like she didn't believe him. The silence returned. Ryan drove carefully. Every stoplight felt longer than usual. Every car around them felt too close. Victoria's head turned toward the window. She watched the buildings pass like she was trying to remember something she'd lost. Then, without warning, she said, "I can't afford a mistake." Ryan's stomach tightened. He didn't look at her. He just said, "None of us can." Victoria's lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected him to say that. Her voice dropped even lower. "I think." She stopped again. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Ryan felt his heartbeat slow down, heavy. He already knew where this was going. Victoria turned her head toward him. Her eyes were glossy now, not crying, but close. "I think I might have crossed the line," she said. Ryan's hands tightened on the wheel. He kept driving. But inside, something went cold. Because he knew what she meant, and he knew what she was afraid of, and he knew the kind of damage a misunderstanding like that could do. He didn't speak right away. The car was quiet except for the hum of the engine and the distant rush of traffic. Victoria waited, tense, watching him. Ryan finally said, carefully, "What do you remember?" Victoria blinked. Slow. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her fingers twisted together in her lap. "I don't know," she whispered. "That's the problem." Ryan felt his jaw tighten. He didn't want to be in this moment, not because he didn't care, because he did. Because he could already feel the weight of it settling onto his shoulders like wet concrete. He kept his eyes on the road. His voice came out low, controlled. "We didn't do anything," he said. Victoria stared at him. Ryan didn't look away. "We didn't," he repeated. Something in her expression shifted. A small tremor of disbelief, like she wanted to trust him but couldn't trust herself. Then she said, "How can you be sure?" Ryan's throat tightened, because he wasn't sure what she was asking. Not fully, but he understood enough. He took a slow breath. "I'm sure," he said, "because I wouldn't let that happen." Victoria's face turned slightly, like his words hit her harder than expected. Her eyes flicked down to his hands on the wheel, then to the booster seat behind him, and for the first time since they left the party, her voice cracked. Not dramatic, just a small break. "I don't remember getting into your car," she said. Ryan felt something twist in his chest. He didn't answer right away, because he could hear the fear underneath her words. The fear wasn't about him, it was about herself. The idea that she'd lost control, that she'd become the kind of person who did things she couldn't account for. Ryan swallowed. He kept his voice steady. "You asked me to take you home. That's it." Victoria stared at him like she was trying to search his face for lies. Ryan didn't give her any. He drove on. And the rest of the city felt too quiet, as if the night itself was listening. They drove the rest of the way without music. Ryan didn't turn the radio on. It felt wrong to fill the space. Victoria's building came into view after 15 minutes. Glass front, tall, clean lines. The kind of place with a doorman who knew names and didn't forget faces. Ryan pulled up to the curb. He put the car in park but didn't turn the engine off right away. Victoria stared ahead at the entrance like it was farther away than it looked. "You'll be fine," Ryan said, and immediately regretted how thin that sounded. Victoria let out a small breath through her nose. Not quite a laugh. "I'm not worried about getting inside." He didn't ask what she was worried about. He already knew. Ryan shut the engine off. The quiet settled fast. Victoria reached for the door handle and missed it the first time. Her fingers brushed the panel instead. She tried again, slower. Ryan stepped out of the car and came around to her side before she could protest. He opened the door. Victoria looked up at him. There was that flicker again. Pride wrestling with need. "I can walk," she said. "I know." He offered his hand without touching her. She hesitated. Then she placed her fingers in his palm. Her hand was colder now. She stood carefully. Her balance held this time, but only barely. The doorman's eyes flicked to them as they approached. Not curious. Just observant. Ryan felt it anyway. Victoria straightened as much as she could, slipping her hand from his once they reached the steps. She adjusted her posture like muscle memory. Chin lifted. Shoulders back. The doorman nodded. "Evening, Ms. Hale." "Good evening," she replied smoothly. If someone had only heard her voice, they would have thought she'd had one drink. Maybe two. Ryan stayed half a step behind her inside the lobby. The air smelled faintly like polished wood and something floral. Victoria walked toward the elevator. Her heels were quieter now against the marble. When the doors closed, she exhaled. Her shoulders dropped an inch. Ryan watched the numbers light up as they climbed. Neither of them spoke. In the reflection of the mirrored wall, he could see her watching him. Not openly. Just through small glances. He kept his eyes forward. The elevator stopped on the 22nd floor. Victoria stepped out first. The hallway was carpeted, thick enough to swallow sound. She walked slower now. The alcohol had settled into her limbs. Heavy. Delayed. When she reached her door, she paused. Her purse slipped from her shoulder and thudded softly against her hip. She fumbled for her keys. Ryan didn't offer to help this time. He let her do it. It took longer than it should have. Finally, the door unlocked. Victoria pushed it open and stepped inside. The lights were off. The apartment beyond looked dark and still. She turned toward him. For a moment, they just stood there. The doorway between them. "You don't have to come in," she said. It wasn't dismissal. It was caution. Ryan nodded. "I won't." Victoria studied his face like she was trying to read something that wasn't there. Then she stepped back inside. Ryan waited in the hall while she moved slowly through the living room, turning on a lamp. Warm light spread across the space. The apartment was neat. Minimal. Everything in its place. Too quiet. Victoria kicked off her heels and winced slightly when her bare feet hit the floor. Ryan stayed where he was. "You should drink water," he said. She gave a faint nod, already walking toward what he assumed was the kitchen. He heard cabinets open, the sound of running water. He didn't move. After a minute, she came back into view with a glass in her hand. She looked steadier now, but her face had gone pale under the flush. "Thank you," she said. It wasn't formal. It wasn't the way she thanked people at work. It was smaller. Ryan inclined his head. "Get some sleep." Victoria looked like she wanted to say more. Her mouth opened slightly. Then she closed it again. Instead, she asked, "You're sure?" Ryan held her gaze. "Yes." The word didn't waver. Victoria searched his face one last time. Then she nodded. "Good night, Ryan." He hadn't heard his name sound like that before. Not from her. "Good night." He stepped back into the hallway. The door closed gently. Ryan stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He didn't know why his hands felt unsteady. He hadn't done anything wrong. He knew that. Still, something about the night sat heavy in his chest. He walked back to the elevator. On the ride down, he stared at his reflection. His shirt was wrinkled now, his hair slightly out of place. He looked tired, older than 36. He thought about Emma asleep in her bed. He thought about the booster seat in the back of his car. He thought about the way Victoria had said, "I can't afford a mistake." When the elevator doors opened, the doorman glanced at him again. Just briefly. Ryan nodded. Outside, the cold air felt sharper than before. He got back into his car and sat there for a moment without starting it. He rubbed a hand over his face. His phone buzzed. His chest tightened instantly. He grabbed it. Mrs. Baines. He answered before the second ring. "Hi," he said, already bracing. "She's fine," Mrs. Baines said warmly. "Fell asleep about half an hour ago. I just wanted to make sure you're on your way." Relief spread through him so fast it almost made him dizzy. "I'm on my way now," he said. He ended the call and leaned back in his seat for a second. He closed his eyes, just for a breath. Then he started the engine. The drive home felt longer than it should have. The city thinned into quieter streets, fewer lights, smaller buildings. Ryan parked outside his house and sat there again, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. His life felt very far from Victoria's. Different worlds, different risks. He went inside quietly. Mrs. Baines was waiting in the living room with a book in her lap. She smiled when she saw him. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. She studied him for a second longer than usual. "You look tired. Long night." She nodded. She nodded. She didn't pry. After she left, Ryan walked down the hallway to Emma's room. He opened the door slowly. The nightlight cast a soft glow across her small bed. Emma was sprawled diagonally across the mattress, one arm hanging off the side. Her hair was a mess against the pillow. Ryan stepped closer. He adjusted the blanket over her shoulder. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. He stood there for a while, just watching her breathe. This was the center of his life. Everything else orbited around it. He couldn't afford rumors. He couldn't afford misunderstandings. He especially couldn't afford being seen as the kind of man who took advantage of a drunk woman, even if it wasn't true. Especially if it wasn't true. Ryan walked back into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. His house was modest, clean but lived in. A small crack in the ceiling he kept meaning to fix. Dishes drying by the sink. He leaned against the counter and replayed the night in his head. Every moment. Every word. Did he touch her more than necessary? Did anyone see them leave? Did anyone take a picture? He tried to remember faces. The manager who called out when they left. The bartender. Claire. His stomach tightened when he thought about Claire. She was observant, protective of Victoria in a way that bordered on territorial. If Claire had noticed Victoria was drunk and then seen her leaving with him, Ryan set the glass down harder than he meant to. It made a sharp sound in the quiet kitchen. He exhaled slowly. Nothing happened. He repeated it to himself. Nothing happened. He had done what any decent person would do. He had made sure she got home safe. That was it. He went to bed later than he should have. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it wasn't restful. Morning came too fast. Emma padded into his room at 6:30 like she always did, climbing onto his bed without asking. "Daddy," she whispered. Ryan opened his eyes. He smiled automatically. "Morning." She snuggled against him. "Did you go to your party?" "Yeah." "Was it boring?" He hesitated. "Kind of." Emma giggled. Ryan rested his chin lightly on her head. For a moment, Everything felt normal again. Simple. He made her breakfast, braided her hair clumsily, walked her to school. He tried not to check his phone too often. Victoria hadn't texted. He didn't expect her to. When he arrived at work, the building felt the same. Glass doors, security desk, the usual hum of early conversations. But something in him was already braced. He rode the elevator up with two coworkers from accounting. They were laughing about something that happened at the party. "Did you see Mark trying to dance?" one of them said. Ryan forced a faint smile. "Yeah," he replied. "Total disaster." The elevator doors opened. The office floor looked unchanged. Desks, screens, coffee machines hissing in the background. Ryan walked toward his station. He could feel it before he saw her. Victoria's office door was closed. That wasn't unusual. But Claire was standing outside it, arms crossed. When Claire's eyes landed on Ryan, they held for a beat too long. Ryan felt his stomach drop. She didn't smile. She didn't frown either. She just watched him. Then she turned and knocked on Victoria's door. Ryan sat down at his desk. His pulse was steady, but his shoulders felt tight. The door to Victoria's office opened. Claire stepped inside. A minute later, she came back out. She walked directly toward Ryan. Not fast, not slow. Measured. "Mr. Carter," she said evenly. Ryan stood. "Ms. Hale would like to see you." There it was. No expression. No hint. Ryan nodded once. Of course. As he walked toward Victoria's office, the weight from the night before settled fully into place. He didn't know what she remembered. He didn't know what she believed. He didn't know what she might say. He only knew that whatever happened next wouldn't stay contained between them. He reached the door. Claire opened it without knocking this time. Ryan stepped inside. Victoria was standing by the window, her back to him. The morning light cut across the room, sharp and unforgiving. She looked composed, immaculate. Like the woman from the party had never existed. She didn't turn around right away. "Close the door," she said. Ryan did. The click sounded louder than it should have. Victoria took a slow breath. Then she faced him. Her eyes met his. And for the first time since he'd known her. He couldn't read her at all. Victoria didn't offer him a seat. Ryan didn't ask for one. He stood near the door, hands relaxed at his sides, keeping his posture neutral. Not defensive. Not casual. The way he stood in meetings when he needed to look steady even if he wasn't. Victoria looked like she'd slept maybe 2 hours. Her makeup was perfect, but it couldn't hide the faint darkness beneath her eyes. Her hair was pinned back tightly, not a single strand out of place. The kind of control that felt deliberate, like she'd spent extra time making sure there was nothing soft left for anyone to notice. Her gaze stayed on him. Too direct. Ryan could feel the air between them tightening. He waited. Victoria finally spoke. "Did you tell anyone?" Ryan blinked once. "No," he said. Victoria's jaw clenched slightly, as if she'd expected a different answer, or maybe she'd expected the truth to sound different. She walked back to her desk and sat down slowly, carefully, like her body still wasn't fully cooperating. She folded her hands on the desk. "I don't remember everything," she said. Ryan kept his face still. "I gathered that." Victoria's eyes flickered. She didn't like the way he said it. Not rude, but too honest. Ryan didn't soften it. If he started trying to comfort her, it could look like guilt, like closeness, like something more than what it was. Victoria's fingers tightened. "What do you remember?" he asked. Victoria hesitated. Then she looked down at her hands. "I remember being angry," she said quietly. "Not at anyone, not at the company, just angry." Ryan said nothing. Victoria continued. "I remember thinking I could handle it. I remember someone handing me another drink and I didn't even question it." Her voice tightened at the end. "I remember you asking me if I was okay." Ryan nodded once. "That happened." Victoria looked up sharply. That confirmation seemed to unsettle her more than it should have, like hearing the memory out loud made it real. "And then," she said, "I remember being outside, the cold. And I remember your car." Ryan stayed still. Victoria's eyes held his. And after that, it's pieces. Ryan could see the frustration on her face, but it wasn't the frustration of embarrassment. It was fear. The fear of not knowing what she had done, of not knowing who she had been. Victoria leaned back slightly in her chair. Her voice dropped. Did I say anything inappropriate? Ryan's throat tightened. He kept his answer simple. You said you couldn't afford a mistake. Victoria stared at him. And? She pressed. Ryan paused. He could still hear her voice from the car. That quiet edge in it. The way she'd looked at him like she was bracing for something ugly. He chose his words carefully. You asked if you embarrassed yourself. You said you didn't usually drink like that. You said you thought you might have crossed the line. Victoria's face went still. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Ryan watched her absorb it. Then she whispered, Did I touch you? The question landed hard. Ryan felt his stomach drop, not because it was unexpected, but because hearing it out loud made everything sharper, more dangerous. He shook his head once. No. Victoria didn't seem relieved. She looked worse. Like the answer didn't calm her because it didn't solve the deeper fear. What about you? She asked. Ryan didn't move. What about me? He repeated. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. Did you? She couldn't finish. Ryan understood. He felt his jaw tighten. No, he said firmly. I didn't. Victoria's eyes shut for a second. When she opened them again, there was something strained in her expression. She didn't look like a powerful executive anymore. She looked like someone trying to keep her dignity from collapsing in her hands. I'm sorry, she said. Ryan didn't respond right away, because he didn't know what she was apologizing for. For drinking? For asking? For putting him in that situation? Maybe all of it. Ryan kept his voice level. You don't need to apologize. Victoria looked at him like she didn't believe he meant that either. You could have let me make a fool of myself, she said. You could have left me there. Ryan didn't shrug, didn't smile. He just said, that didn't feel right. Victoria stared at him. Something shifted in her eyes. Not warmth, not romance, just a quiet, reluctant recognition. Like she was realizing she'd misjudged him. Or maybe she was realizing she hadn't judged him at all. She'd only seen him as an employee. Victoria looked down at her desk again. Then she reached for a folder, opened it, and pretended to look at something inside. Ryan could tell she wasn't reading. She was stalling. I shouldn't have involved you, she said. Ryan's chest tightened slightly. He knew what she meant. She wasn't talking about inconvenience. She was talking about risk. She was talking about reputation. She was talking about power. Ryan took a breath. Victoria, he said, and the use of her name made her glance up immediately. I'm going to say this once. Nothing happened. I got you home. I didn't go inside. I didn't touch you. I didn't tell anyone. That's the entire story. Victoria held his gaze. Her throat moved as she swallowed. Okay, she said quietly. Ryan didn't move. He waited for her to dismiss him. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, Why? Ryan frowned slightly. Why what? Why did you help me? Victoria's voice was controlled, but there was something raw under it. Most people in that room would have watched me fall just to have something to whisper about on Monday. Ryan stared at her. He didn't have a clean answer. He thought about Emma, about how he'd want someone to help her someday if she ever needed it. He thought about his own mother, long gone, and how she'd always told him that a person was measured by what they did when no one was watching. He didn't say any of that. He just said, because you needed help. Victoria's eyes stayed on him. Then she nodded once like she was accepting something she didn't fully understand. She took a breath and straightened. The moment shifted. The boss returned. I want this kept private, she said. Ryan's expression didn't change. It will be. Victoria's gaze hardened slightly, as if she needed to make sure. If anyone asks, she continued, you left early. Ryan nodded. I did leave early, he said. Victoria's mouth tightened. She understood what he meant. That technically he had, just not in the way she wanted it to sound. There was a pause. Then she said, quieter, "Ryan, thank you." It sounded like it cost her something to say it. Ryan nodded once. He turned to leave. His hand was on the doorknob when Victoria spoke again. "Wait." Ryan froze. He didn't turn immediately. He felt the shift in the air again. That uneasy feeling that things weren't over. He turned back. Victoria's eyes were fixed on him. She looked hesitant now, like she was weighing something in her head. Then she asked, "Did anyone see us leave?" Ryan's stomach tightened. He thought about the manager at the door, the drunk smile, the raised glass. He thought about the doorman. He didn't want to lie. He also didn't want to scare her. One person called out, Ryan admitted, but it didn't seem serious. And the doorman saw us. Victoria's face went pale again. She didn't flinch, but her hands tightened on the folder. "The doorman knows who I am," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. Victoria stared at her desk for a long time. Then she looked up at him, her eyes sharp now. "If anything comes out of this," she began. Ryan waited. Victoria stopped herself. She pressed her lips together. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning. It was fear again. Contained, but present. Ryan said, "If anything comes out of it, I'll tell the truth." Victoria's gaze held his. She nodded once. Ryan left the office. The moment he stepped into the hallway, he felt like he could breathe again. But it didn't last, because Claire was waiting outside, not standing casually, not pretending to work. Waiting, her eyes landed on him immediately. Ryan kept walking like it didn't matter. Claire fell into step beside him. "You got her home last night," she said. It wasn't a question. Ryan didn't stop. He didn't speed up either. He said evenly, "Yes." Claire's expression didn't change, but her voice sharpened slightly. "She didn't ask you to do that." Ryan glanced at her briefly. "She did." Claire's jaw tightened. She stopped walking, but Ryan didn't. He kept going until he reached his desk. He sat down slowly, as if his body hadn't noticed the tension yet. Claire stood there a moment longer watching him. Then she leaned slightly closer. "If you're smart," she said quietly, "you'll forget it happened." Ryan looked up at her. His eyes stayed calm, but something inside him went hard. "I already have," he said. Claire stared at him for a long second, then turned and walked away. Ryan sat there staring at his computer screen without seeing it. His hands were still, but his pulse wasn't, because he understood something now. This wasn't going to stay private, not in an office like this, not with a woman like Victoria, not with someone like Claire watching. He swallowed and forced himself to open his inbox. The workday moved forward like nothing had happened. But Ryan felt the shift in every interaction. The sideways glances, the small pauses in conversation when he walked by. Maybe it was in his head, maybe it wasn't. At lunch, he ate alone at his desk. He didn't want to sit in the break room, didn't want to be around voices. He didn't want to accidentally hear his own name. He kept his phone face down beside his keyboard. At 2 o'clock, his phone buzzed. A text. "Mrs. Baines, Emma says she wants pancakes for dinner." Ryan stared at the message for a long moment. His chest loosened slightly. He typed back, "Tell her we'll do pancakes." He set the phone down and leaned back in his chair. Emma didn't know anything about last night. Emma didn't know what it meant to have your life hanging on someone else's perception. She just wanted pancakes. Ryan stayed at work until 6. He didn't leave early. He didn't want anyone to think he was avoiding something. When he finally got up, he saw Victoria through the glass wall of her office. She was still there, still working, her posture rigid. She looked up as he passed. Their eyes met, only for a second. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Ryan saw something in her gaze. Not gratitude, not apology, something else, like she was still trying to convince herself she was safe. Ryan walked out without stopping. In the elevator, he stood alone. The hum of the cables felt louder than usual. He stared at the metal doors. His reflection looked tired again. He didn't like being in this kind of situation. He didn't like the feeling of being watched. He didn't like the fact that the truth wasn't enough. He got to his car, drove home, and tried to let it go. But even at home, the night followed him. He made pancakes, burned the first batch because he kept staring at nothing. Emma didn't notice. She talked about her day, about a girl in her class who stole her pink pencil, about how her teacher smelled like oranges. Ryan nodded and smiled and listened. He laughed when he was supposed to. But later, after Emma went to bed, Ryan stood in the kitchen alone. The house was quiet. He washed the dishes slowly, hands moving on autopilot, and the thought came back again, sharper this time. If someone decided to twist this, he had no protection. No witnesses, no proof, just his word. And her word. And he didn't know which one the world would believe. Ryan dried his hands and turned off the light. He went to his room. He lay down. Sleep didn't come, because he couldn't stop thinking about the way Victoria had looked at him in the car. Not like a boss, not like a stranger, like someone trying to understand what kind of man he was. And Ryan wasn't sure if being understood was a good thing. The rumors didn't arrive all at once. They came in pieces, soft, almost polite. On Wednesday morning, two analysts stopped talking when Ryan walked into the copy room. One of them gave him a quick nod, the kind that tries too hard to look normal. He didn't react. He made his copies, stapled them, left. By Thursday, someone had moved his name from a client presentation he'd been leading for weeks. No explanation, just a quiet change in the shared calendar. He noticed. He didn't ask about it. At 11 that same morning, his manager, Thomas, asked him to step into a conference room. Thomas was the type who wore expensive watches and never loosened his tie. He didn't look uncomfortable often. He looked uncomfortable now. Ryan closed the door behind him. Thomas gestured to the chair. "Sit." Ryan sat. Thomas didn't. He stood by the window instead, hands clasped behind his back. "I've been hearing things," Thomas said. Ryan felt the words settle in his chest like a stone. He didn't speak. Thomas turned halfway toward him. "About the party." Ryan kept his expression steady. "What about it?" Thomas exhaled through his nose. "That you left with Victoria." Ryan nodded once. "I did." Thomas watched him carefully. "She was intoxicated." "Yes." "And you drove her home." "Yes." Thomas's jaw shifted slightly. He wasn't angry. He was calculating. "Do you understand how that looks?" he asked. Ryan held his gaze. "I do." There was a pause. Thomas studied him for several seconds. "Is there anything I should know?" he asked finally. Ryan felt his pulse in his throat. He could see the line he was being offered. Confess to something smaller. Frame it differently. Soften it. He didn't take it. "No," Ryan said. Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. "Nothing happened," Ryan added. "She asked for help. I gave her a ride." "That's it." Thomas turned back toward the window. The silence stretched. Then he said, quieter, "Clara's concerned." Ryan's jaw tightened before he could stop it. "Concerned about what?" he asked. Thomas hesitated. "About boundaries." Ryan almost laughed. He didn't. He leaned forward slightly instead. "With respect," he said carefully. "If I'd left her there, drunk and alone, would that have been better for boundaries?" Thomas didn't answer right away. Ryan continued, his voice still even. "I didn't go inside. I didn't touch her. I made sure she got home safely." Thomas turned back toward him. "Victoria hasn't filed any complaint," Thomas said. Ryan felt something sharp move through his chest. "Hasn't." The word lingered. He didn't react outwardly. Thomas went on, "But perception matters." Ryan nodded slowly. "I know." Thomas studied him one last time. "Be careful," he said. "You have a good reputation here." Ryan stood. "So does she," he replied quietly. Thomas didn't respond to that. Ryan left the room feeling colder than when he'd walked in. The rest of the day dragged. People weren't obvious about it. No one pointed. No one whispered loudly. But Ryan could feel it. He could feel the slight shift in tone when someone addressed him. The way Claire avoided eye contact now, which somehow felt worse than her watching him. At 4:30, Victoria called him into her office again. This time, she looked less fragile, more controlled. Her expression was unreadable. "Have you spoken to Thomas?" she asked without greeting. "Yes." Her jaw tightened slightly. "What did he say?" "That perception matters." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. She stood and walked toward the window, mirroring Thomas from earlier. Ryan stayed near the door again. "They're questioning your judgment," she said. Ryan didn't respond. Victoria turned to face him. "And mine," she added. The words were clipped. Controlled anger. Ryan felt something shift inside him. Not fear. Something closer to frustration. "I didn't think helping you into a car would require strategic planning," he said. Victoria's eyes flashed briefly. "Lower your voice," she said. Ryan hadn't realized that it had risen. He took a breath and steadied himself. "I'm not upset with you," Victoria continued. "I'm upset with how this looks." Ryan met her gaze. "How does it look?" Victoria held his eyes. "Like a man taking advantage of a drunk woman." The words landed between them like something heavy and sharp. Ryan felt his face go still. He didn't look away. "You don't believe that," he said. It wasn't a question. Victoria's expression shifted. "No," she said quietly. Ryan exhaled slowly. "But others might," she added. There it was again. The weight of other people. The invisible jury. Victoria walked back to her desk. "Claire thinks I should make a formal statement," she said. Ryan's stomach dropped. "What kind of statement?" "That nothing inappropriate occurred." Ryan stared at her. "And you don't want to?" he asked. Victoria hesitated. "If I issue a statement," she said carefully, "it confirms there was something to address." Ryan understood that logic. Silence could be safer than defense. Unless silence was interpreted as guilt. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "What do you want?" he asked. Victoria looked at him. For the first time since the party, she didn't look like his boss. She looked uncertain. "I want this to disappear," she said. Ryan nodded once. "So do I." Silence again. Then Victoria asked, softer, "Is this affecting your daughter?" Ryan blinked. The question caught him off guard. "She doesn't know anything," he said. Victoria studied his face. "But," she pressed. Ryan hesitated. He didn't want to bring Emma into this room, but he also wasn't going to lie. "But if I lose my job over something that didn't happen," he said evenly, "it affects her." Victoria's shoulders stiffened. "That won't happen," she said quickly. Ryan didn't challenge her, but he didn't look convinced either. Victoria saw it. "I won't let that happen," she repeated firmer. Ryan held her gaze. He believed she meant it. He just wasn't sure she had full control, because now this wasn't just about what happened in a car. It was about power, about image, about who got protected when things turned ugly. Victoria seemed to realize something then. She leaned back in her chair, her voice quieter. "This is my fault." Ryan shook his head once. "No." "Yes," she insisted. "I should have left earlier. I should have known my limits." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Everyone has limits," he said. "You hit yours. That doesn't make you reckless." Victoria stared at him. There was something fragile in that look again. She wasn't used to being forgiven. Not by herself. After a moment, she looked away. "I've worked too hard to have my name attached to something careless," she said. Ryan nodded slowly. "I know." Victoria's eyes flicked back to him. "How would you know?" she asked, not unkindly. Ryan hesitated. Then he answered, "Because I don't get second chances." Victoria watched him carefully. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The booster seat in his car said enough. After a long pause, Victoria straightened again. "I'll speak to Thomas," she said. "And Claire." Ryan didn't look relieved. He looked tired. "Thank you," he said. Victoria's gaze lingered on him longer this time. Then she said something unexpected. "I don't regret that it was you." Ryan felt the words land before he understood them. He didn't respond right away. Victoria continued, quieter. "If I had to lose control in front of someone, I'm glad it wasn't someone else. Ryan swallowed. He wasn't sure what to do with that. It won't happen again, he said finally. Victoria's mouth curved faintly. That's not what I meant. The air shifted again. Not dangerous. Not inappropriate. Just different. Ryan cleared his throat slightly. I should get back to work. Victoria nodded. As he turned to leave, she added, Ryan. He paused. Yes? She looked at him, and this time there was no fear in her expression. Only something steady. I trust you. The words settled somewhere deep. Not flattering. Heavy. Ryan nodded once. Okay. He left her office feeling something he hadn't expected. Not relief. Not dread. Something more complicated. Because trust could protect, but it could also bind. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat on the edge of his couch in the dark. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. He replayed Victoria's words in his head. I trust you. He didn't want that. Not fully. Trust meant closeness. Closeness meant vulnerability. And vulnerability was expensive. He'd learned that years ago when Emma's mother left with 2 suitcases and an apology that didn't fix anything. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He stared at the floor. He wasn't attracted to Victoria in the way people might assume. It wasn't about that. It was about the way she'd looked at him in the elevator. The way she'd asked if she'd touched him. The way she'd sounded when she said she couldn't afford a mistake. He recognized that tone. It was the same one he heard in himself sometimes. The quiet panic of someone who knows everything they've built could fall apart with one bad night. Ryan ran a hand over his face. He didn't want to be connected to her like this. Not because she wasn't worthy, but because their lives were balanced on different edges. And if one of them slipped, it wouldn't hurt them equally. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, a text from an unknown number. He stared at it for a second before opening it. Thank you for not letting me fall. No name, no signature. He didn't need one. Ryan sat very still. He read the message again. There was no punctuation. No emojis. Just that. He typed back, You're welcome. He stared at the screen for a long moment after sending it. Then another message appeared. I meant more than physically. Ryan's throat tightened. He didn't respond right away. He didn't know how to. After a minute, another text came. Good night, Ryan. He looked at the name this time. Victoria. He set the phone down on the table. He didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he understood something now. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. And it wasn't just about that night anymore. He turned off the light and sat in the dark a little longer than necessary. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard shifted as it cooled. Ryan listened to the quiet. And for the first time since the party, the tension wasn't coming from rumors. It was coming from inside him. Ryan didn't sleep much after the text. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, phone face down on the nightstand like it was something that could burn him if he touched it again. He kept hearing the words in his head. I meant more than physically. He understood what she was saying. He also understood what it could become if he responded the wrong way. In the morning, he moved through his routine like it was muscle memory. Wake Emma, pack her lunch, tie her shoes, make sure her homework folder was in her backpack, smile when she smiled, pretend the world wasn't shifting. Emma didn't notice anything. She never did, not unless it was obvious. That was the part that scared him sometimes. How children could live in the same house as tension and still laugh at cartoons. After dropping her off at school, Ryan drove to work with the radio off. He kept his phone in the cup holder where he could see it. It stayed silent. At the office, the atmosphere changed again. Not dramatically. Not like a storm. More like a pressure system settling in. People were careful around him. He caught conversations ending as he approached. Saw faces turn away too quickly. He even noticed someone glance at his left hand as if checking for a wedding ring that wasn't there. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was real. Ryan sat at his desk and logged in. He didn't look toward Victoria's office. He didn't want to. He could feel her presence anyway. The way the entire floor revolved around her. People walked differently when she was nearby. They spoke more quietly. They straightened their posture without realizing it. At 9:30, Claire sent out an email to the entire department. A short, stiff message. Reminder, professional boundaries are expected at all company events. If you ever feel uncomfortable or unsure about an interaction, please contact HR or your direct supervisor. Ryan read it once, then again. He stared at the words professional boundaries until they started to blur. He could almost hear Claire's voice in his head. Calm, precise, weaponized. He closed the email and sat back. His jaw ached from clenching. Around noon, he went to the break room for coffee. The room was mostly empty. Two people at the far end were talking quietly. They stopped when Ryan entered, pretending to check their phones. Ryan didn't look at them. He poured coffee into a paper cup. As he stirred in sugar, someone stepped in behind him. Thomas. Ryan didn't turn right away. Thomas didn't bother with small talk. HR is asking questions, he said. Ryan's hand paused mid-stir. He set the stir stick down carefully. What questions? Ryan asked. Thomas stood beside him, arms folded. They want to know what happened at the party. Ryan looked at him now. Thomas's expression was tired. Not accusing. Just worn down. Ryan's voice stayed level. Who started it? Thomas hesitated. Then he said, Claire? Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. He nodded once like he'd expected it. Thomas continued. She claims she saw Victoria leave with you, that she was visibly intoxicated, that you were guiding her. Ryan didn't respond. Thomas watched him closely. Ryan, he said quietly, tell me the truth. Ryan's gaze didn't waver. I already have. Thomas exhaled. He rubbed a hand over his forehead like he was trying to push away a headache. Victoria is furious, Thomas said. That surprised Ryan. He hadn't pictured fury. He'd pictured embarrassment, fear, damage control. Not fury, Thomas continued. She called HR herself and told them to drop it. Ryan's chest loosened slightly, but not enough. Thomas added, They won't. Ryan felt his throat tighten. Why? He asked. Thomas looked at him with a grim kind of honesty. Because they're not investigating her, he said. They're investigating you. Ryan didn't move. The words didn't hit like a punch. They hit like a slow collapse. Because of course they were. Single father, mid-level employee, no family connections, no money, no power. He was the easier risk to manage. Thomas lowered his voice. They want to talk to you this afternoon. Ryan nodded once. He didn't trust his voice. Thomas studied him for a moment longer, then said, I don't think you did anything. Ryan looked at him. Thomas's expression stayed serious. But I need you to understand, he continued, this isn't about what happened. It's about what the company wants to believe happened. Ryan stared at him, then he gave a short nod. I understand. Thomas left the break room. Ryan stayed there for another minute, holding his coffee cup, not drinking it. His hands were steady. His heart wasn't. He thought about Emma again. About her school picture day next week. About her braces appointment in a month. About the fact that her shoes were already getting tight, and he'd been planning to buy new ones on Friday. He pictured someone from HR sitting across from him with a notepad and polite eyes. He pictured being escorted out of the building. He pictured the look on Emma's face when he told her they had to move again. Ryan's grip tightened around the cup until it started to bend. He set it down and walked back to his desk. At 2 o'clock, an HR representative named Angela asked him to come to conference room B. Angela was the kind of woman who smiled constantly, even when she was saying something unpleasant. She wore pastel blouses and spoke in a voice that sounded like customer service. The room was cold. There were 2 chairs on one side of the table and 1 chair on the other. Ryan sat alone. Angela sat across from him with a folder. Thomas wasn't there. That told Ryan everything. Angela smiled. Ryan, thank you for meeting with me. Ryan nodded once. She opened the folder. We're conducting a routine review of an incident reported from the company event last Friday, she said. Ryan didn't respond. Angela continued. This is standard procedure. It's not an accusation. We simply need clarity. Ryan watched her face. He didn't believe her. Angela leaned forward slightly. "Can you walk me through the evening?" she asked. Ryan took a slow breath. He started at the beginning. Arrived. Talked to coworkers. Stayed sober. Saw Victoria at the bar. Noticed she wasn't steady. Asked if she was okay. Offered to call her a car. She said she didn't want to go home alone. He drove her home. He didn't go inside. He left. He kept it factual. He kept it factual. He didn't add emotion. He didn't say anything about her fear. Her words in the car. The way she'd looked at the booster seat. Angela listened, nodding occasionally. When he finished, she asked, "Did Miss Design Hale initiate physical contact with you?" Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "She stumbled," he said. "I steadied her by the elbow." Angela wrote something down. "Did she say anything of a sexual nature?" Angela asked. Ryan stared at her. "No." Angela nodded again, writing. "Did you say anything of a sexual nature?" she asked. Ryan felt his face go still. "No." Angela's smile stayed in place, but her eyes didn't soften. "Did you enter her apartment?" "No." "Did she invite you inside?" Ryan hesitated. Because she had, in a way. Not directly, but the door had been open. The moment it hung there. He chose honesty. "She asked if I wanted to come in," he said. Angela's pen paused. Ryan continued immediately. "And I declined." Angela wrote again. She looked up. "Did you have any previous relationship with Ms. Hale outside of work?" she asked. Ryan almost laughed at the absurdity. But he didn't. "No." Angela nodded. She closed the folder. "Thank you," she said warmly. Ryan didn't feel thanked. He felt measured. Angela leaned back. "One more question," she said. Ryan waited. "Do you feel that Ms. Hale's position influenced your decision to help her?" Ryan stared at her. The question was phrased gently, but it was sharp. It suggested coercion, power imbalance, fear of retaliation. Ryan understood what she wanted. She wanted him to say yes. If he said yes, the company could frame him as a victim of an executive's misuse of power. They could protect their image by sacrificing Victoria or by forcing her into some quiet leave. But if he said no, then he became the risk again. He became the man who voluntarily inserted himself into a drunk woman's night. Ryan's mouth went dry. He thought of Victoria's face in the elevator. He thought of the way she'd said, "I trust you." He thought of the text message sitting in his phone, unanswered. Ryan looked at Angela. "No," he said. Angela's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Okay," she said. "Thank you for your honesty." The meeting ended. Ryan walked out feeling like he'd left part of himself in that room. He went back to his desk. At 5:30, his phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. "Can you come to my office?" "Now." Ryan stared at it for a second. His chest tightened. He didn't reply. He stood up and walked toward her office. Claire was at her desk outside the door, typing. She didn't look up when he approached. Ryan knocked. Victoria's voice came through immediately. "Come in." Ryan opened the door. Victoria was standing again like she couldn't sit. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. She didn't wait for him to speak. "HR spoke to you," she said. Ryan nodded. "Yes." Victoria's jaw tightened. "What did you tell them?" Ryan hesitated, then answered honestly. "The truth." Victoria stared at him. She looked like she wanted to ask for details, but didn't want to seem desperate. Ryan offered them anyway. "I told them you were intoxicated. I told them I drove you home. I told them I didn't go inside." Victoria's shoulders loosened slightly. Then her eyes hardened again. "And the part where I asked if I crossed a line?" she asked. Ryan held her gaze. "I didn't mention that." Victoria's expression flickered. Not relief. Something like shame. "Why not?" she asked. Ryan's voice stayed calm. "Because it wasn't relevant." Victoria stared at him. Then she exhaled slowly. "You should have told them everything," she said. Ryan frowned slightly. "Why?" Victoria looked at him like he didn't understand. If you leave details out, she said, it looks like you're hiding something. Ryan's jaw tightened. Or it looks like I'm protecting you, he said. Victoria didn't respond. The silence between them felt heavy. Finally, Victoria said, Claire reported it. Ryan nodded. I know. Victoria's mouth tightened. She thinks she's protecting me, Victoria said. Ryan didn't answer. Victoria stepped closer to her desk, hands braced on the edge. She's been with me for 6 years, she said. She's loyal, but she doesn't understand where loyalty ends and control begins. Ryan watched her. He could hear the anger in her voice, but under it was something else. Fear again. Not of the rumor, of being exposed, of being seen as human. Victoria looked up at him suddenly. Did she threaten you? She asked. Ryan hesitated. He thought of Claire's words. If you're smart, you'll forget it happened. He chose the truth again. Yes, he said. Victoria's face went hard. For the first time, Ryan saw the full force of her authority. Not polished, not corporate. Something colder. She had no right, Victoria said. Ryan didn't respond. Victoria's eyes stayed locked on him. I want you to understand something, she said. I won't allow her to ruin you to protect me. Ryan's throat tightened. Victoria, he said carefully, this isn't about her. This is about what people want to believe. Victoria's gaze didn't soften. I know, she said, and that's why I'm going to stop it. Ryan watched her for a moment. He believed she meant it. But he didn't know what stop it looked like in a company like this. Victoria walked toward the door. She opened it slightly and called out, voice sharp and controlled. Claire, come in. Ryan's stomach tightened instantly. Claire stepped in almost immediately, posture straight, expression neutral. Victoria closed the door behind her. The three of them stood in the office like a triangle of tension. Victoria didn't sit. Neither did Ryan. Claire looked between them, calm. Victoria spoke first. Did you report me to HR? She asked. Claire didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Why? Claire's voice stayed steady. Because you were compromised. Victoria's mouth tightened. I was drunk, Victoria said. Not compromised. Claire's gaze flicked to Ryan briefly. You left with him, Claire said. Ryan felt the word him like a slap. Victoria's voice sharpened. And he took me home safely, she said. Claire's expression didn't change. That's not the point, she replied. Victoria took a slow breath. No, she said quietly. It is the point. Claire's jaw tightened. Victoria continued. You made this bigger than it needed to be. Claire's eyes flashed now. I'm protecting you, she said. Victoria stepped closer. You're protecting the version of me you can control, she said. The silence that followed felt thick. Ryan didn't move. Claire's face tightened, but she didn't break. Then she looked at Ryan. You shouldn't be here, she said. Ryan met her gaze. I didn't ask to be, he replied. Victoria's head turned sharply toward Claire. Enough, she said. Claire's eyes returned to Victoria. Victoria's voice dropped, deadly calm. You will not speak to him again about this, she said. You will not imply anything. You will not involve HR, and you will not attempt to handle me. Claire stared at her. You're making a mistake, Claire said quietly. Victoria didn't blink. No, she said. You are. Claire's mouth tightened. She nodded once, stiff. As you wish. Victoria's eyes stayed cold. Claire turned and left the office. The door shut. Ryan exhaled slowly, realizing only then that he'd been holding his breath. Victoria's shoulders dropped slightly. She turned toward him. Her eyes were still hard, but the anger had shifted inward now. I'm sorry, she said. Ryan shook his head. You don't need to apologize for her. Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked away, voice quieter. I hate being looked at like that, she said. Ryan understood what she meant. Not just judged, reduced, handled. Ryan didn't answer right away. He said finally, You shouldn't have to fight your own people. Victoria's eyes flicked to him again. Her voice was low. Neither should you. The silence between them changed. It wasn't tense in the same way. It felt heavier, more intimate, like they'd both been dragged into something they didn't choose. Victoria walked back to her desk and sat down slowly. She looked tired now. The fight had drained her. Ryan stood there, unsure if he should leave. Victoria spoke without looking up. Did HR make you feel like a criminal? She asked. Ryan's jaw tightened. Yes, he admitted. Victoria nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the desk. I'll deal with it, she said. Ryan didn't move. He watched her for a moment longer. Then he said quietly, You shouldn't have to. Victoria's head lifted. Her eyes met his. Something in her expression softened, just slightly. Ryan, she said, I don't think you understand. Ryan waited. Victoria's voice dropped. No one does things for me unless they want something back. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He didn't respond right away, because the truth was, he did understand. He'd lived around that kind of world before, even if he'd never belonged to it. He looked at her. I didn't want anything, he said. Victoria's gaze stayed on him. Then she nodded once, like she was accepting it, but it scared her. Ryan turned to leave. He reached the door. Victoria's voice stopped him again. Ryan. He paused. Yes? There was a beat of silence. Then she said, If this damages you, I'll resign. Ryan turned back sharply. His face went still. That's not an option, he said. Victoria's eyes held his. It is. Ryan took a step closer. His voice dropped. You have a career, a life. You've built something. I'm not letting you throw it away because people are bored. Victoria's expression tightened. And I'm not letting you be sacrificed, she shot back. Ryan held her gaze. The air between them felt too close, too charged. He forced himself to step back. This will blow over, he said. Victoria didn't look convinced. Ryan added, quieter, It has to. He left her office before either of them could say something worse, or something truer. He walked out of the building into the cold evening air. His hands were shaking slightly by the time he reached his car. Not from fear, from anger, from the fact that the truth didn't matter, from the fact that one night of doing the right thing could undo everything he'd spent years holding together. He drove home. Emma was waiting at the window when he pulled in, her face bright. She ran to the door when he stepped inside. Daddy, I got a sticker today. Ryan smiled automatically. That's great, Em. She grabbed his hand and dragged him toward the kitchen. Mrs. Baines made cookies. She said I could have two. Ryan nodded. He let Emma talk. He let her voice fill the house. He let her joy push the day back for a while. But later, after she was asleep again, Ryan sat at the kitchen table with the lights off. His phone lay in front of him. He stared at it. He didn't want to text Victoria. He didn't want to blur lines. But he also couldn't stop thinking about her saying she would resign. He couldn't stop thinking about her standing in front of Claire like she was taking a bullet meant for him. Ryan picked up his phone. He typed slowly. Don't do anything drastic. He stared at the message for a full minute before sending it. Then he put the phone down and sat back. His chest felt tight, not because of fear this time, because he realized something he didn't want to admit. He cared, and caring was the most dangerous thing in the world. Victoria didn't answer right away. Ryan told himself that was good. Distance was good. Silence was safer than whatever had been building between them. He washed a plate that didn't need washing, dried it twice, put it away. His phone buzzed anyway. He didn't look at it at first. He finished wiping the counter, rinsed the cloth, hung it neatly over the sink. The phone buzzed again. He picked it up. I'm not resigning, she wrote. A second message followed. But don't mistake restraint for weakness. Ryan read both lines twice. He could hear her voice in them. Calm, controlled, steel underneath. He typed back. I wouldn't. He set the phone down. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Another message. Claire won't stop. A pause. She thinks she's saving me from something. Ryan's jaw tightened. He didn't like that word. Saving. He understood now how quickly a narrative could shift, how easily he could become the danger in someone else's story. He typed slowly. From what? The response came faster this time. From you. Ryan felt something sharp move through his chest. He leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. It shouldn't have bothered him. He knew who he was. He knew what he did that night. Still, seeing it written that way made his stomach turn. He didn't respond for a while. When he did, he kept it simple. I won't give her a reason. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I know. Ryan exhaled slowly. That was worse somehow. He set the phone down and didn't pick it up again. The next week stretched thin. HR didn't call him back in. Thomas avoided eye contact more than usual. Claire was quiet. Too quiet. Victoria became colder in meetings. Not toward him specifically. Toward everyone. She cut people off mid-sentence. Corrected numbers sharply. Dismissed weak ideas without cushioning them. The office started to buzz with a different kind of rumor now. That she was under pressure. That the board had asked questions. That something had happened at the party. Ryan kept his head down. He did his work. He stayed late when needed. He didn't step into the break room unless it was empty, but no matter how careful he was, he felt it. The way people watched him when Victoria entered a room, the way someone once joked, "Need a ride home tonight, boss," and then laughed too loudly. Victoria had gone still when that was said. Ryan had felt heat crawl up his neck. He didn't look at her. She didn't look at him. The joke died quickly. But the damage stayed. On Thursday evening, the building emptied out earlier than usual. There was a storm coming. The sky had gone dark by 4, thick clouds pressing low over the city. Ryan packed up around 6. As he walked past Victoria's office, he noticed her door was open. She was alone inside. No lights on except the desk lamp. He hesitated, then kept walking. Ryan. Her voice carried down the hallway. He stopped, turned back. She was standing in the doorway now. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. He checked the time out of habit. Emma would be fine for another hour. "Yes," he said. He stepped inside. Victoria closed the door behind him, but not all the way this time. It remained slightly ajar. He noticed. She noticed him noticing. Neither of them commented on it. Victoria didn't sit. She leaned against her desk instead, arms crossed. "There's a board meeting tomorrow," she said. Ryan waited. "They're reviewing conduct policies," she continued. Ryan felt the implication. "Because of this?" he asked. Victoria nodded once. "They won't say it directly," she said. "But yes." Ryan swallowed. "So what happens?" Victoria's expression tightened slightly. "They'll likely issue new guidelines, mandatory training, public emphasis on executive accountability." Ryan heard the unspoken part. Someone would need to look responsible. "And you?" he asked. Victoria held his gaze. "I've been advised to distance myself." Ryan didn't like the way that sounded. "From what?" he asked quietly. "From you," she said. The word landed heavier than it should have. Ryan felt something in his chest sink. "That's smart," he said after a moment. Victoria's eyes narrowed faintly. "Is it?" she asked. Ryan nodded once. "It protects you." Victoria pushed off the desk and stepped closer. "And you?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer immediately. He didn't want to say it. "I'll be fine," he said. Victoria studied him carefully. "You won't," she said softly. Ryan's jaw tightened. He didn't like being read that clearly. She stepped even closer now, though still at a respectful distance. "Claire isn't the only one talking," she said. "There are others who think you saw an opportunity." Ryan felt heat rise behind his ribs. "An opportunity," he repeated flatly. Victoria nodded. "They think you attached yourself to me deliberately." Ryan laughed once, not amused. "That's impressive," he said. "I didn't realize I was that strategic." Victoria didn't smile. "This is how it works," she said. "When something doesn't make sense, people create a version that does." Ryan ran a hand through his hair. He felt tired suddenly. "Then let them," he said. Victoria's eyes flashed. "I won't," she said. The firmness in her voice startled him. Ryan looked at her. There was no embarrassment left now, only resolve. "You don't owe me that," he said. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. "I don't owe you," she agreed. Silence. Then she added, quieter, "But I choose to." Ryan felt the air thin. He didn't move. Neither did she. The storm outside cracked suddenly, thunder rolling across the windows. Neither of them flinched. Victoria spoke again, her voice lower now. "I haven't had many people in my life who did something kind without asking for something in return." Ryan looked at her. He didn't know what to say to that. She continued, "It unsettled me." Ryan's throat tightened slightly. "That wasn't the intention," he said. "I know." She held his gaze. "And that's the problem." The words hung between them. Ryan felt something shift inside him again. Something quiet. He thought of Emma's face when she waited by the window for him. He thought of how small his world was. How contained. He didn't have room for complicated things. "Victoria," he said carefully, "we should keep this simple." Her lips curved faintly. "When has anything about this been simple?" Ryan didn't answer. Because she was right. The door creaked slightly as a draft moved through the hallway. Victoria glanced at it, then back at him. "After tomorrow," she said, "things will change." Ryan nodded. "They already have." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked something that caught him off guard. "Do you regret helping me?" Ryan didn't hesitate. "No." The certainty in his voice surprised even him. Victoria studied his face. "Why?" she asked again. Ryan took a breath. "Because you looked afraid. Because I couldn't leave you there. Because my daughter will grow up in a world where I hope someone helps her if she needs it." He didn't say any of that. He just said, "Because it was the right thing." Victoria's eyes softened slightly. "You're stubborn," she said. Ryan almost smiled. "I've been called worse." Another crack of thunder shook the windows. The lights flickered briefly. Victoria looked toward the city beyond the glass. Then she said, almost to herself, "I don't want to lose this." Ryan's chest tightened. "Lose what?" he asked quietly. She looked back at him. "This," she said. He understood. Not romance, not something reckless. The trust, the strange understanding that had formed in the middle of something ugly. Ryan swallowed. "We haven't lost anything," he said. Victoria studied him. Then she stepped back, creating space again. "You should go," she said. Ryan nodded. He turned toward the door. "Ryan." He paused again. "Yes?" Her voice was steady now. "No matter what they say tomorrow, I won't rewrite what happened." Ryan held her gaze. "Neither will I," he said. He left her office with the sound of the storm filling the hallway. That night, the rain didn't stop. Ryan stood at his bedroom window after Emma fell asleep, watching water streak down the glass. He thought about boardrooms and policies and perception. He thought about how easy it would be for Victoria to protect herself by letting the story drift toward him. She wouldn't have to lie. She would only have to stay quiet. He believed she wouldn't. But belief didn't change systems. His phone buzzed once. A single message. "Thank you for not regretting it." Ryan stared at the words. He didn't reply. He didn't trust himself to say something that wouldn't open a door he wasn't ready to walk through. He turned the phone face down. The rain kept falling, and for the first time since the party, the tension wasn't just fear. It was something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. He didn't know which was worse. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Ryan didn't attend, obviously. He wasn't senior enough to sit in a room where decisions were made with calm voices and expensive pens. But he felt it anyway. The entire floor felt suspended. Work was quieter than usual. People checked emails more often. Claire moved back and forth between Victoria's office in the conference wing with a folder pressed tightly to her chest. Ryan kept his eyes on his screen. He answered emails, reviewed reports, fixed a mistake in a spreadsheet that had nothing to do with him. At 11:15, the office assistant sent out a company-wide memo, effective immediately. Updated conduct guidelines will apply to all staff and executive leadership. Mandatory training sessions will be scheduled. Transparency and accountability remain our priority. Ryan read it twice. There was no mention of names, no reference to the party, no direct accusation. But the message was clear. Something had happened, and the company had responded. He sat back slowly. His chest felt tight, but not the way it had during the HR interview. This felt contained, like a wound that had been cleaned but not closed. Around noon, Victoria's office door opened. She stepped out. Her posture was straight, chin level, expression unreadable. People glanced up as she walked down the aisle between desks. Not obviously, just enough. She stopped at Ryan's desk. He felt every set of eyes on them. "Mr. Carter," she said evenly, "I need the revised projections for the Reynolds account." Her tone was neutral, professional. He met her gaze. "I'll have them to you in 20 minutes. 15, she corrected. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once and moved on. Ryan stared at his screen for a few seconds after she left. He understood what she was doing. Distance. Clarity. No room for interpretation. He respected it. Still, something inside him tightened when she walked past without anything more. He finished the projections in 13 minutes and emailed them directly. She replied with a single word. Received. Nothing else. The days that followed were like that. Sharp edges. Clean boundaries. Victoria stopped texting him at night. Ryan didn't reach out either. In meetings, she addressed him the same way she addressed everyone else. He noticed Claire watching him less. HR didn't call him back. The rumor lost energy. Without new fuel, it faded into something dull and unfinished. By the second week after the board meeting, the office felt almost normal again. Almost. On Friday afternoon, as people began packing up early for the weekend, Ryan stayed at his desk longer than usual. He didn't have a reason. He just didn't feel like leaving yet. The office grew quiet. At 6, the lights dimmed automatically in the main area. Ryan finally shut down his computer. When he stood, he noticed Victoria's office light was still on. He hesitated. Then he walked past. He didn't stop. He told himself that was the right thing to do. He made it to the elevator. Pressed the button. Waited. The doors opened. He stepped inside. Just before they closed, a hand slid between them. Victoria stepped in. The doors shut behind her. The elevator hummed downward. Neither of them spoke at first. The small space felt different from the hallway. More contained. Ryan stared at the floor indicator. Victoria looked straight ahead. "You handled it well," she said finally. Her voice was low, not boss-like. Ryan glanced at her. "Handled what?" "The board. HR." The silence. Ryan gave a small shrug. "I didn't have much choice." Victoria's lips curved faintly. "There's always a choice," she said. Ryan didn't argue. The elevator slowed at the 10th floor, then continued. After a moment, she added, "Thank you for not turning it into something else." Ryan understood what she meant. He could have claimed coercion. He could have leaned into the power imbalance narrative. He could have forced the company to protect him publicly. He hadn't. "I told the truth," he said. Victoria turned her head slightly toward him. "That's not as common as you think." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. They stepped out together. The building was nearly empty. The security guard gave them a casual nod. Outside, the air was cool and quiet. The city felt calmer after rain. They walked side by side toward the parking area. Not touching. Not close enough to invite commentary. But not distant either. Victoria spoke again. Claire submitted her resignation. Ryan stopped walking. Victoria turned toward him. She said she could no longer support leadership decisions she didn't agree with. She said evenly. Ryan searched her face. "You didn't fire her," he said. "It wasn't a question." Victoria shook her head once. "No." Ryan felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. She was trying to protect you, he said. Victoria's expression tightened slightly. She was trying to protect an idea of me, she corrected. Ryan absorbed that. They resumed walking. At the edge of the parking lot, Victoria stopped again. I wanted to tell you myself, she said. Ryan nodded. Okay. There was a pause. The quiet felt heavier now that the crisis had passed. Victoria looked at him differently tonight. Not guarded, not afraid, just present. I've been thinking, she said. Ryan waited. I don't want what happened to define this, she continued. Ryan's pulse slowed. This, he repeated carefully. Victoria held his gaze. Yes? Ryan swallowed. He didn't want to misunderstand. He also didn't want to assume. What is this? He asked. Victoria didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the row of parked cars, then back at him. I don't know yet, she admitted. Ryan felt something in his chest loosen at the honesty. She wasn't naming it. She wasn't rushing it. She was acknowledging it. That mattered. Victoria continued, quieter now. But I don't want it to disappear because it started badly. Ryan exhaled slowly. It didn't start badly, he said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. I was drunk, she said. You were overwhelmed, he corrected. Victoria studied him. You're generous, she said. Ryan shook his head. I'm accurate. That earned the smallest smile. It didn't last long. The parking lot lights flickered on overhead. Victoria's voice softened. I've kept my life very controlled, she said, very narrow. Ryan listened. I don't let people see me unsure, she continued. I don't let them see me need anything. Ryan nodded slightly. I noticed. She almost laughed at that. And yet, she said, you saw me like that anyway. Ryan didn't respond. He didn't want to turn it into something bigger than it was. Victoria stepped a fraction closer. Not enough to touch, enough to change the space. I don't want to pretend it didn't mean anything, she said. Ryan's chest tightened. He thought of Emma, of school schedules, of grocery lists and early mornings. His life wasn't empty. It was full, but it was narrow in a different way. I can't offer chaos, he said quietly. Victoria's expression shifted. I'm not asking for chaos, she replied. He held her gaze. I have a daughter, he said. Victoria nodded. I know. She comes first, he added. I would expect nothing less, she said. The simplicity of that answer caught him off guard. She didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. She just accepted it. Ryan felt something shift inside him again. Not fear, not tension. Something steadier. Victoria tilted her head slightly. May I ask you something? She said. Yes. Why did you never tell anyone about her? Ryan looked away briefly. Because people look at you differently. Because they assume you're tired. Because they assume you're broken. He shrugged lightly. It wasn't relevant to work. Victoria watched him carefully. It's relevant to you, she said. Ryan met her eyes again. He didn't argue. They stood there in the quiet for several seconds. Then Victoria said, Would you have dinner with me? The question wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flirtatious. It was steady. Ryan's pulse quickened anyway. He thought about headlines in his head. About whispers. About Emma sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. He also thought about the way Victoria had stood in front of Claire and refused to let him be rewritten. He didn't answer right away. Victoria didn't push. Finally, he said, Not publicly. Her expression didn't change. Understood. Ryan took a breath. Somewhere quiet, he added. She nodded. Somewhere quiet, she agreed. He hesitated one more second. Then he said, Okay. The word felt heavier than it should have. Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Text me when, she said. Ryan nodded. She walked to her car. He watched her for a second before turning toward his own. As he drove home, he felt something unfamiliar. Not dread, not tension, not even relief. Possibility. It scared him more than the rumors had. Because rumors could be fought. Possibility required choice, and choice meant risk. When he pulled into his driveway, Emma was again at the window. He smiled automatically. He stepped inside. She ran toward him. "Daddy, can we build a fort tonight?" Ryan scooped her up easily. "Yeah," he said. She wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her tighter than usual. Over her shoulder, he stared at the wall. His life had been simple for years, predictable, safe in its smallness. Now something had shifted. Not loudly, but permanently. And he didn't know yet if that shift would make things stronger or break something he couldn't afford to lose. Ryan didn't text her that night. He built the fort instead. Emma dragged blankets from the hallway closet and insisted on using every pillow in the house. The living room slowly disappeared under soft walls and crooked architecture. Ryan crawled inside with her, knees protesting, shoulders brushing the coffee table. She handed him a flashlight like it was sacred. "You have to make the monster voice," she whispered. Ryan did. Low, dramatic, terrible. Emma laughed so hard she hiccuped. For a while, the world narrowed to that small space. The smell of laundry detergent in the blankets, the warmth of her hair against his arm, the way she trusted that he would always be there when she reached for him in the dark. Later, after she fell asleep on the couch in the middle of the fort, Ryan carried her to bed. He stood in her doorway longer than usual. Dinner. The word felt heavier now, not because it was romantic, because it wasn't. It was deliberate. He went back to the living room, sat on the edge of the couch, and picked up his phone. He typed, "Tuesday, 7:30. There's a small place on Alder, quiet." He stared at it before sending, then he pressed send and set the phone down like it might object. The reply came 5 minutes later. "I'll be there." No smiley face, no flourish, just certainty. Tuesday arrived with a kind of nervous quiet Ryan hadn't felt in years. He dropped Emma and Mrs. Baines with more instructions than necessary. Extra snacks in her backpack, emergency numbers written on the fridge even though they were already there. Mrs. Baines watched him carefully. "You going somewhere special?" she asked. Ryan hesitated. "Just dinner." She smiled slightly. "That's good." He didn't elaborate. The restaurant on Alder was small and unremarkable from the outside. No neon sign, no loud music spilling onto the sidewalk. Just warm light through the windows and the faint smell of garlic when the door opened. Ryan arrived 10 minutes early. He chose a table near the back. Not hidden, just removed from the front windows. He checked his watch. Then the door opened. Victoria stepped inside. She wasn't dressed like she was going to an event. No sharp heels, no severe lines. She wore a simple dark sweater and tailored pants. Her hair was down, resting against her shoulders in a way he hadn't seen before. She looked lighter. She saw him and walked over. "Hi," she said. Her voice was softer than it ever was at work. "Hi," he replied. For a second they just stood there, not sure if this was a handshake moment. A nod. Nothing at all. Victoria sat first. Ryan followed. The waiter brought water. "Ask about wine." Victoria glanced at Ryan briefly. "Sparkling water," she said. Ryan nodded. "Same." When the waiter left, the silence settled in. Not tense, just unfamiliar. Victoria folded her hands on the table. "This feels strange," she admitted. Ryan gave a small nod. "Different," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "You're uncomfortable." Ryan didn't deny it. "Yes." Victoria's lips curved faintly. "I'm glad," she said. He frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because it means this matters." Ryan exhaled slowly. He didn't want it to matter too quickly, but it already did. They ordered food, simple dishes, nothing elaborate. For a few minutes they talked about neutral things, work projects, the Reynolds account, the updated policies. The conversation felt almost rehearsed. Then Victoria said, "Tell me about her." Ryan looked up. "Emma," she clarified. His shoulders shifted automatically. He didn't talk about Emma at work. He didn't let her bleed into that space. But this wasn't work. "She's 7, he said. She likes pancakes more than any human should. Victoria smiled. She sounds reasonable. Ryan's mouth twitched. She's stubborn. Victoria raised an eyebrow. I wonder where she gets that. He ignored that. She asks too many questions, he continued, and she hates when I braid her hair because I'm bad at it. Victoria laughed quietly, not the controlled version he heard in meetings, something softer. Why didn't you tell anyone? She asked gently. Ryan stared at the water in his glass. He didn't want to sound bitter, but he also wasn't going to pretend. Because when people know you're doing it alone, they look at you like you're already behind. Victoria didn't interrupt. They assume you can't give 100%, he added. They assume you're distracted or tired. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. You are tired, she said. Ryan met her gaze. Yes, there was no shame in it, just truth. Victoria looked down at her hands. I don't have anyone waiting for me at home, she said quietly. Ryan didn't respond right away. She continued. I used to think that was strength. He studied her face. And now, he asked. She hesitated. Now I think it might just be isolation. The word hung between them. The food arrived. For a while, they focused on eating. It grounded the conversation. The clink of silverware. The low murmur of other diners. After a few minutes, Victoria spoke again. I haven't dated in years, she said. Ryan looked up. I didn't have time, she continued. Or I told myself I didn't. He didn't ask why. He could guess. When you build your life around control, vulnerability becomes inefficient. And you? She asked. Ryan's jaw shifted slightly. Not seriously, he said. Victoria watched him. Because of Emma? Because of everything, he replied. She nodded. Neither of them said the obvious, that this was different. Not dramatic, just intentional. Victoria set her fork down. I don't want to complicate your life, she said. Ryan leaned back slightly. You already did, he said calmly. Her eyebrows lifted. He held her gaze. But not in a bad way, he added. Victoria's shoulders loosened slightly. That's not exactly reassuring, she said. He almost smiled. It's honest. There was a pause. Then she asked, Are you afraid of this? Ryan didn't rush the answer. Yes, he said finally. Victoria didn't look offended. Good, she said quietly. He tilted his head slightly. Why? Because so am I. The simplicity of it settled something inside him. No games, no pretense, just two people who understood risk. Victoria leaned forward slightly. I won't ask you to choose, she said. Ryan's chest tightened. I wouldn't, she added quickly. I just need you to know that. He studied her face carefully. She meant it. That mattered. He nodded once. I don't move fast, he said. I don't either, she replied. A small, quiet understanding passed between them. They finished dinner slowly. No rush. No dramatic declarations. When the bill came, Ryan reached for it automatically. Victoria watched him. Split it, she said. He hesitated. She held his gaze. Equal, she added. He nodded. Equal, she added. He nodded. Equal. Outside, the air was cool again. They stepped onto the sidewalk. For a second, they stood facing each other, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the possibility. This doesn't leave this street, Ryan said quietly. Victoria nodded. I know. He hesitated. Then he said, I need time. You'll have it, she replied. There was no disappointment in her voice, just patience. Ryan nodded once. Good night, he said. Good night, Ryan. She didn't try to hug him. He didn't reach for her. They walked in opposite directions. Ryan's chest felt tight as he headed toward his car. Not from fear, from awareness. This wasn't reckless. It wasn't dramatic. It was careful. And careful things sometimes went deeper than wild ones. When he got home, Emma was already asleep on the couch again, Mrs. Baines knitting quietly beside her. "How was dinner?" she asked softly. Ryan paused. He considered the word. "Calm," he said. "Mrs. Burboard." "Calm," he said. "Mrs. Burboard." Baines smiled faintly. "That's nice." Ryan carried Emma to bed. As he tucked her in, she stirred. "Did you have pancakes?" she mumbled. He smiled. "No." "Okay," she whispered, already drifting again. Ryan stood in the dark after she fell still. He felt different. Not lighter, not heavier. Just aware that something had begun. Something that required balance. In the kitchen, his phone buzzed once. He didn't rush to it. He washed his hands first. Then he picked it up. "Thank you for tonight." He stared at the message, then typed back, "We'll take it slow." 3 dots appeared. "Slow is fine," she replied. Ryan set the phone down. He turned off the lights. As he walked toward his bedroom, he felt something settle inside him. Not certainty, not security, but intention. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. The next few weeks didn't look like anything from the outside. No dramatic change. No sudden closeness. Victoria didn't start hovering near his desk. Ryan didn't find excuses to be in her office. They didn't text late into the night. If anything, they became more careful. At work, she remained Victoria Hale. Calm, sharp, untouchable. Ryan remained Ryan Carter. Quiet, competent, unremarkable in the way that made people stop looking too closely. But something had shifted. It wasn't in what they said. It was in what they didn't. In meetings, Ryan caught her eyes on him when someone else was speaking. Brief, quick glances, like checking that he was still there, checking that the trust between them hadn't been erased by the day. Ryan pretended not to notice. He wasn't sure what would happen if he acknowledged it. Once, on a Thursday evening, he stayed late to finish a report. The floor was almost empty. Victoria stepped out of her office with her coat in her hand. She paused when she saw him. "You're still here," she said. Ryan didn't look up from his screen. Deadline. Victoria nodded as if she understood. She hesitated. Then she asked, "How's Emma?" Ryan's hands paused on the keyboard. He looked up. Victoria's face was neutral. No softness. No smile. But her voice had changed. It wasn't a boss checking in. It was a woman asking about something she'd been thinking about. "She's good," Ryan said. "She's obsessed with building forts now." Victoria's lips curved slightly. "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She nodded once. Then she said quietly, "Tell her I said hello." Ryan stared at her. "She doesn't know you," he said. Victoria's expression didn't shift. "I know," she replied. Then she walked toward the elevator. Ryan watched her go. He didn't understand why that sentence stayed with him all night. "Tell her I said hello." It wasn't romantic. It was worse. It was real. Their second dinner happened on a Sunday. Not in the city. Victoria suggested a place farther out, quieter, where no one from work would ever wander in by accident. Ryan agreed. He drove. Victoria met him there. She wore a coat that looked expensive but non-showy. Her hair was tied back loosely this time, not tight. Her hands were tucked into her pockets when she arrived. They ate slowly, talked more than the first time. Not about work, about childhood, about small things. Brian found out Victoria grew up in a house where silence was treated like discipline, where mistakes were remembered longer than achievements, where her father had praised her only when she won. Victoria found out Ryan had once wanted to be a teacher, that he'd started college late, dropped out when Emma's mother left, and never went back. "You never told anyone that," Victoria said. Ryan shrugged. No one asked. Victoria looked at him across the table. "I'm asking now," she said. Ryan didn't answer right away. He took a sip of water. "I didn't want to be impressive," he said, finally. "I wanted to be stable." Victoria stared at him. Something in her eyes tightened. Not pity. Recognition. After dinner, they walked outside and stood near Ryan's car. The air was cold enough that their breath showed. Victoria kept her hands in her coat pockets. Ryan didn't touch her. He didn't want to rush into something that couldn't be undone. But when Victoria looked at him, her eyes steady and quiet, he felt something inside him give slightly. Not breaking. Opening. "You should go," he said. Victoria nodded. "I know." She didn't move. Ryan watched her for a moment. Then he said, "I'm not good at this." Victoria's mouth curved faintly. "I'm worse," she said. Ryan nodded once. Then, slowly, he reached out and touched her hand. Just the back of it. A light contact. Victoria didn't pull away. Her fingers turned slightly, and she held his hand. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even an embrace. It was something simpler. Something that felt heavier than either of those. Then she let go. "Good night," she said. Ryan nodded. "Good night." He watched her walk to her car. When he drove home, his hand still felt warm where she'd held it. The next morning, everything cracked open. It started with a voicemail. Ryan was at his desk when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. He glanced at the screen. Mrs. Baines. His chest tightened. He answered immediately. "Hello?" Her voice came through sharp and breathless. "Ryan, you need to come to the school." His stomach dropped. "What happened?" he asked. "She fell," Mrs. Baines said. "Emma fell during recess. They're saying she hit her head. They called an ambulance." Ryan stood so fast his chair rolled back into the desk behind him. His throat went dry. "I'm coming," he said. He didn't even remember grabbing his coat. He walked fast toward the elevator. He didn't care who saw. The office blurred around him. He heard someone call his name, but he didn't stop. In the lobby, he was already dialing the school. No answer. He dialed again. His fingers shook. He could feel his heart pounding against his ribs like it was trying to get out. He reached the parking lot and fumbled with his keys. His hands were clumsy. He dropped them once. When he finally got into the car, his phone buzzed again. A text. "Mrs. Baines. They're taking her to Mercy General." Ryan's vision narrowed. Mercy General wasn't far, but traffic downtown could turn 10 minutes into 30. He started the engine and pulled out too fast. He didn't care. He drove like his entire body was one tight wire. At a red light, he glanced down at his phone again. Another message. From Thomas. "HR wants to see you. Call me when you can." Ryan stared at the text for a second. Then he tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. He didn't care about HR. He didn't care about rumors. He didn't care about Victoria Hale. Not in that moment. All he could see was Emma's face, her laugh inside the blanket fort, her sleepy voice asking about pancakes. He hit the highway and pushed the speed limit until the cars around him forced him to slow. His hand stayed locked on the wheel. He didn't remember breathing. When he reached the hospital, he parked crooked in the first available spot and ran inside. The smell of disinfectant hit him like a wall. He rushed to the front desk. "My daughter," he said, voice tight. "Emma Carter." She came in by ambulance. The nurse looked up, startled by his urgency. She typed quickly. "Yes," she said. "She's in imaging. CT scan, pediatric wing, 3rd floor." Ryan didn't wait for directions. He ran for the elevator. His knee bounced as the doors shut. The ride felt endless. When the doors opened, he ran down the hallway until he saw Mrs. Baines sitting in a chair, hands folded in her lap. Her face was pale. Ryan stopped in front of her. "Where is she?" he asked. Mrs. Baines stood quickly. "They're still scanning her," she said. "They said she was awake, but she was crying. She kept asking for you." Ryan's throat tightened so hard it hurt. He nodded once. He tried to breathe. "Did she pass out?" he asked. Mrs. Baines shook her head. "No. But she was dizzy. She vomited once." Ryan felt cold spread through his arms. He looked down the hallway toward the closed doors. He wanted to tear through them. He didn't. He forced himself to stand still. Minutes passed like hours. Then a doctor appeared, a man in his 40s with tired eyes. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. Ryan stepped forward. "Yes." The doctor nodded. "Your daughter has a concussion," he said. "Moderate. We're keeping her overnight for observation." Ryan's knees nearly gave. Relief and fear hit him at the same time. "She's okay?" he asked. "She's stable," the doctor said. "But she needs rest. No screens, no running around. We'll monitor her for swelling." Ryan nodded again. His voice came out rough. "Can I see her?" The doctor gestured down the hall. "Yes, she's asking for you." Ryan didn't wait. He walked quickly into the room. Emma was lying in a hospital bed, her small face pale against the pillow, a bandage on her forehead. Her eyes were open, glossy with tears. The moment she saw him, her mouth trembled. "Daddy," she whispered. Ryan crossed the room and sat down beside her immediately. He took her hand carefully. "I'm here," he said. Emma's fingers curled around his like she was afraid he'd disappear again. "It hurts," she said. Ryan swallowed hard. "I know," he whispered. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead gently against hers, careful not to touch the injury. He stayed like that for a long moment, breathing slowly. He didn't know what else to do. He didn't know how to be anything but present. When he finally pulled back, Emma was staring at him. "You're shaking," she said softly. Ryan forced a smile that didn't feel like one. "I'm fine," he lied. Emma frowned weakly. "You always say that," she murmured. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He looked at her face, at her eyes struggling to stay open, and something inside him went quiet. Not numb, just focused. He couldn't afford to lose her. He couldn't afford to make choices that risked her stability. And suddenly, everything else, Victoria, the office, the rumors, felt small. He sat with Emma until she fell asleep again. When she did, Ryan stood up and stepped into the hallway. Mrs. Baines was still there. She looked up. "She okay?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "She's okay." His voice cracked slightly. Mrs. Baines reached out and squeezed his arm. "You're a good father," she said quietly. Ryan didn't respond. He couldn't. He walked toward the vending machine, needing air, needing movement. As he stood there staring at the bright plastic snacks behind the glass, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. "Victoria." He stared at her name. He didn't know how she knew. Then he remembered. The office, the way people watched. He opened the message. "Thomas told me." "Which hospital?" Ryan stared at the screen for a long moment. His chest tightened again, but differently. He typed, "Mercy General. Concussion. She's stable." He hit send. He leaned against the wall. His hand pressed over his eyes. He didn't want to need anyone, but in that hallway, under those harsh fluorescent lights, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. How alone he'd been. His phone buzzed again. "I'm coming." Ryan's breath caught. He stared at the message. He didn't reply. He didn't say no. He just stood there, phone in his hand, feeling something inside him resist and give at the same time. Ryan didn't expect her to actually come. People say they're coming all the time. It sounds supportive. It fills silence. He stood in the hallway outside Emma's room, staring at the vending machine without seeing it, telling himself she probably wouldn't leave the office, that she'd think better of it, that this was too personal, too exposed. 40 minutes later, he heard her voice at the nurse's station. Calm, clear, asking for Emma Carter. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, Victoria was walking down the hallway toward him. She wasn't dressed for an evening out. She'd thrown a coat over her work clothes. Her hair was still pinned back from the day. There was no makeup left to soften the sharpness of her features. She looked human, not composed, not executive. Just a woman who had driven fast and didn't care how she looked. She stopped a few feet in front of him. "How is she?" she asked. Ryan's throat felt tight. "Concussion," he said. "They're keeping her overnight." Victoria nodded once, absorbing it. "She's awake?" she asked. "She was," he replied. "She's sleeping now." There was a pause. The hallway hummed with quiet hospital sounds, a monitor beeping somewhere. Distant footsteps, the smell of antiseptic. Victoria looked toward the room. "May I?" she asked. Ryan hesitated. This was the line. Work life. Home life. The wall he had kept solid for years. He pictured Emma inside that room. Pale, small, vulnerable. He pictured Victoria standing beside her. He searched himself for resistance. There was some. But there was something else, too. Trust. He nodded. Okay. They walked into the room quietly. Emma was asleep, her small hand curled near her face. The bandage looked too big on her forehead. Victoria stopped near the foot of the bed. She didn't step closer right away. She looked at Emma for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not pity, not discomfort. Something softer, almost reverent. She's beautiful, Victoria said quietly. Ryan swallowed. Yeah. Victoria stepped closer then, careful not to make noise. Emma stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first. Then they landed on Ryan. He moved immediately to the side of the bed. I'm here, he said. Emma's gaze shifted past him. She saw Victoria, her brow furrowed faintly. Who's that? She whispered. Ryan felt the air change. He glanced at Victoria. Victoria didn't look at him. She looked at Emma. I'm Victoria, she said gently. I work with your dad. Emma blinked slowly. You're the boss, she murmured. Ryan's eyes widened slightly. Victoria's lips curved faintly. Something like that, she said. Emma studied her for a second. You don't look scary, she said. Ryan almost laughed, but it caught in his throat. Victoria let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. I'll take that as a compliment, she said. Emma's eyelids drooped again. She looked back at Ryan. Can she stay? She whispered. The question landed hard. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He looked at Victoria. Victoria didn't move, didn't push. She just stood there, waiting for his answer. Ryan turned back to Emma. For a little while, he said softly. Emma nodded faintly and slipped back into sleep. The room went quiet again. Victoria stepped back slightly, giving them space. Ryan brushed his thumb gently over Emma's hand. She doesn't usually let new people in that fast, he said quietly. Victoria's voice was just as quiet. Neither do you. Ryan didn't respond. He stayed seated beside the bed for several minutes. Victoria stood near the window, hands loosely clasped in front of her. She didn't check her phone. She didn't speak. She just stayed. Eventually, Ryan stood. He walked toward her. They stepped into the hallway again so they wouldn't wake Emma. You didn't have to come, he said. Victoria looked at him steadily. I know. Ryan nodded. There was a long pause. Then he said, HR wanted to see me today. Victoria's expression tightened. Why? She asked. Follow up, he said. More clarification. Victoria's jaw shifted. I told them to close it, she said. They won't, Ryan replied calmly. Not yet. Victoria looked at him like she wanted to fight something. You're here, she said quietly, and they're still questioning you. Ryan leaned back against the wall. She hit her head, he said. Everything else can wait. Victoria studied his face. There were lines there tonight that hadn't been there before. Not from age, from strain. You don't have to carry everything alone, she said. Ryan let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I've been doing it a long time. Victoria stepped a little closer. That doesn't mean you should keep doing it, she replied. Ryan looked at her. He saw it clearly now. She wasn't here out of obligation. She wasn't here to protect an image. She was here because she cared. Not in a reckless way. In a deliberate one, and that scared him more than anything that had happened in the office. I can't lose this job, he said quietly. Victoria's eyes didn't waver. You won't, she said. You don't know that. No, she admitted. But I know I won't let them make you the easy solution. Ryan searched her face. And if they try, he asked. Victoria didn't hesitate. Then I'll tell them exactly what happened, she said. Publicly. Ryan's stomach tightened. That would hurt you, he said. She held his gaze. So would silence. The words settled between them. Ryan felt something inside him shift again. For years he had measured everything in terms of risk, financial, emotional, practical. He had chosen stability over possibility every time, but standing in that hallway, with Emma asleep behind him and Victoria in front of him, he realized something he hadn't allowed himself to admit. Stability without connection was just survival, and he was tired of only surviving. He took a slow breath. Then he said something he hadn't planned to say. "Come over for dinner." Victoria blinked slightly. "Tonight?" she asked. Ryan shook his head. "When Emma's better," he clarified. "When it's not an emergency." Victoria's expression changed. Not surprise, not triumph. Something like relief. "I'd like that," she said. Ryan nodded once. They stood there in the quiet for another minute. Then Victoria said, "I should let you rest." Ryan didn't argue. She paused before leaving. "Ryan." He looked at her. "I'm not afraid of being seen with you," she said. His chest tightened. He nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid either," he replied. It wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. Victoria gave him one last look. Then she walked down the hallway and out of sight. Ryan stood there for a moment longer. He felt different, not lighter, but steadier. He went back into Emma's room and sat beside her again. She stirred slightly and reached for his hand without opening her eyes. He let her hold it. As the hours passed and the hospital quieted into night, Ryan thought about the past few weeks. The party, the rumors, the board, the fear of losing everything. He had spent so much energy protecting himself from damage that he hadn't noticed what had been building quietly alongside it. Trust, not dramatic, not loud, just consistent. Victoria hadn't run when it got messy. She hadn't rewritten the story to save herself. She had stayed, and that mattered more than he wanted to admit. Emma shifted in her sleep. Brian brushed her hair gently away from her face. He looked at her and felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle into place. Then he thought of Victoria standing in the hallway, hands steady, eyes clear. Kindness transforms both their lives. And for the first time, he understood what that meant. Not grand gestures, not sweeping declarations, just choosing, over and over again, to show up. He didn't know what the future would look like. He didn't know what the office would become. He didn't know how people would talk or what they would assume. But he knew this. He would not let fear make his decisions anymore. He would protect his daughter. He would protect the truth. And he would not walk away from something good simply because it had started in a hard place. Emma's grip on his hand tightened briefly. Ryan leaned back in the chair, exhaustion settling into his bones. He closed his eyes for a moment. Not to escape, just to rest, and for the first time in a long time, the weight he carried didn't feel quite so solitary.